first movement of his piano sonata, which is called The Divine Romance, and this first movement is called God's Call Within.
Listen, listen, whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light, for my love, your true home. Long your heart has played the dancer, long you've toyed with merest shadows of the treasures left behind you, deep in your soul. Long you plumbed the dark for answers, long you've begged from beggars' empty hands, gifts of life they too were seeking, gifts none could share. Friend, how long will you wander? Friend, as long as you seek your home in a land where all are strangers, love locks her door. Leave to the weak his craven life, to the coward leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Leave to the weak his craven life, to the coward leave his dreaming. Oh, my saint, wake up, reclaim the light, seek the truth behind all seeming. Turn, turn, turn within, in silence of soul, in cave of love, find my abode. Listen, listen, whispering within your soul, hints of laughter, hints of joy, sweet songs of sadness, of quenchless yearning for the light, for my love, your true.
If you have your chant book, the first one is Shri Guru Deva Om. It's under S. And then the second one will be chanting is God, Christ, Guru. So please join in, everyone.
Shri Guru Deva
invoking the presence of God, Christ, Guru, our spiritual teachers, distiller of darkness, inviting these beings of great light and Christ consciousness into our hearts and mind. And this beautiful chant we'll take into a meditation. The words are very simple: God, Christ, Guru. Let's be together in the divine stillness, awakening our hearts, opening up this beautiful channel, lifting the energy from the heart to the spiritual eye. The divine witness watches the natural breath from Babaji Krishna, the ancient mantra, hung on the inhale, meaning I am, and saw on the exhale, spirit, affirming the truth of who you are through this great mantra infused with divine consciousness. Hong Sa. We'll meditate for 5 minutes together in silence.
Remaining in a meditative state, please listen to this week's affirmation for self-healing. Inspiration. Inspiration is of two kinds: the rediscovery or rearrangement of thoughts that already exist in the subconscious mind, and the sudden appearance of new thoughts or new insights from the superconscious. This higher inspiration certainly is more to be desired than the lower, for it is based in truth and not in imagination. It is not always easy, however, to recognize the difference between lower and higher inspiration, particularly when the lower is vitalized by the emotions. When inspiration comes, receive it with calm love and see whether, untouched by emotion, its impulse grows stronger or weaker. Love is the water that nourishes true inspiration. Please repeat after me loudly to awaken the conscious mind. I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within.
I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within.
In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self.
In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self.
And now in a conversational voice, I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within. In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self.
In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self.
And now repeat the affirmation in a whisper, bringing it into the subconscious. I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within. In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self. And now silently, I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within. In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self. And now bring the awareness to the point between the eyebrows, and with deep concentration and highest aspiration, focusing at the spiritual eye, bringing the affirmation into superconscious awareness, again, silently repeat. I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within. In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self. I hold my thoughts up to the calmness within. In calmness, I receive inspiration from my higher self. O Spirit, thou art all truth. In thee lies the solution to my every need. Inspire me now, Lord. Show me which path to follow of the many that lie before me.
This is a reading from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ananda. Week 35. Who are the true Christians? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yognanda. Jesus Christ said in chapter 10 of the Gospel of St. John, "All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them." Many Christians, not surprisingly, quote this saying in condemnation of other spiritual teachers, not only the Old Testament prophets, but also Buddha, Krishna, and others who lived before Jesus, as well as, by inference, any who came after him. Yet Jesus himself said in St. Matthew chapter 5, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." Nowhere do we find Jesus condemning or even gently criticizing other spiritual masters. His criticisms were reserved for worldly attitudes and for those hypocritical Pharisees who had allowed religion to become for them a pretense. Paramhansa Yogananda explained that the expression, all that ever came before me, referred to those spiritual teachers who place their egos and their self-importance ahead of the Christ consciousness. In the sense of drawing people's devotion to themselves and not offering it to where alone it truly belongs, to God. Yogananda himself was very firm in this regard. For example, he never spoke of anyone as his disciple. Instead, he always insisted they are God's disciples. God is the guru, not I. Ego is a way station on the soul's journey toward enlightenment. The soul is first trapped in lower bodily forms. Slowly it evolves to the human level, at which point self-consciousness appears. Only in human form can self-consciousness transcend material form altogether, including the lower identities of ego consciousness, and discover the true divine self within. Self-consciousness manifested as ego is an incentive to deliberate self-development, Later in the process of development, however, the ego becomes an obstruction. Inevitably, new spiritual aspirants do not emerge effortlessly from the vortex of ego consciousness. Desire must be offered up resolutely and ever more wholeheartedly on the altar of infinity. It is a gradual process, and few, even among those who seek to help others, are free of ego. If, however, their motive in teaching is not to serve, but to be served, they deserve a severe reprimand as Jesus gave them. For their direction of development is no longer upward, but downward. In the name of giving up desires, they are creating new ones. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter, desire obscures even the wisdom of the wise. The relentless foe it is, a flame never quenched. Intellect, mind, and senses. These combined are referred to as a seed of desire. Desire through them deludes and eclipses the discrimination of the embodied soul. O Arjuna, discipline your senses, and having done so, work to destroy desire, an annihilator of wisdom and of self-realization. Give God the credit for everything you do. See him as the doer. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Om. Om. Om.
And now in answer to our question from Whispers from Eternity, Paramhansa Yogananda, let me feel that thou and I are one. When the sparks of cosmic creation flew from under thy crucible of love, I danced with all the lights that herald the coming of my myriad worlds. I am a little spark of joyous cosmic fire, O thou son of light, as I find the nectar poured into the little cups of human minds filled with molten liquids of vital sparks they thought to contain thy golden infinity in the smallness of their human feelings. In each fragile, undelighted mirror of human flesh, I see reflected thy restless dance of omnipresent power. In the lambent waters of life, I behold thy ever steady, almighty life. Teach me, Christ-like, by the power of concentration, to still the restless storms of desire raging on the lake of my mind. Stilling those waters, I lovingly behold thy unruffled face of cosmic stillness. Because the little wave of my life is subdued, that then I can consciously spread out to become thine own vastness. Let me feel my heart throbbing in thy breast, my feet moving with their energy, thy breath breathing through mine, thy energy in my brain. When I cry, thy soft sigh within me wakens me to thy joy. In thy playfulness, little bubble visions of thy creation float dancingly in the chamber of my dreams, which manifest in my deep sleep of delusion. Thy meteoric will courses through the skies of mine own will power. Make me feel that it is thou who art I. Oh, make me thyself, that I behold my little bubble of self ever floating in thee. So the question, the rays of the one light has asked us, who are true Christians, right? And we can say, who are true Hindus? Who are true Buddhists? Who are true people? And the answer is, the more we become our authentic true self, the more we understand we have this egoic self that has lots of desires. It wants this and this and this. It wants to be seen. It wants to be heard. It wants to have lots of money. It wants to have all these things outside of itself, right? And our true self really knows that that investment is a poor investment, that our inner life is the best investment, that our willingness to go inside and find whatever's blocking us, whatever's fueling our desires, whatever inauthenticity, whatever we're longing for out there, that truly isn't going to give us our heart's desire, which is to awaken in the divine. Jesus reminds us in this reading, we are here to fulfill, not to condemn, right? Judgment is such a part of the ego, where fulfillment is an upliftment of consciousness, that God is the true doer and truth is everything. And we can ask ourselves this week, how can I become more true, more authentic, more self-realized, more of a true devotee of God? How can I awaken that? How can I realize the places where I get pulled downward? How can I stay awake enough to not allow some of my egos to seduce me into outward ways that end up just with those dead ends, and we have to turn around and go back again? Jesus is teaching us this week for each one of us to become spiritual teachers, to be examples of self-development through ego evolution, through awareness of ego. We become true. And so, as the Gita explains today, desire obscures wisdom. The intellect, the mind, and the senses eclipse our soul. Arjuna, says Krishna, discipline your senses. And all of us, discipline your senses, Krishna is asking us today. And so, listening to that and reading that a few weeks ago, and in my preparation for Sunday service, I was really trying to be an ego detective. Swami Kriyananda talks, really like looking in the microscope of my inner life and outer life. And, I went through 2 weeks of feeling a lull of energy, feeling maybe some melancholy, kind of feeling a little down, some just angst, and something's not feeling right. And I started this whole narrative in my head about, well, I'm being too outward. I got way too many desires. What's this going on? And, and I had this desire to become desireless. And in it, my ego decided to criticize myself for my desires. And this is very tricky, And so when I stopped the narrative of my mind and really went in through, how I was really feeling, it was a call inwardly to be, to just stop, to find into that stillness. And in that stillness, I found this wisdom and this knowledge. And I realized, I had been refueling my desires through this cycle that I was in, through this self-criticism. And when I went in and I called on the masters and I went in deep into the meditation, I realized that I was going through a vibrational shift in my life, and that this upliftment of consciousness takes energy, and it takes a willingness to really go inside and feel what isn't love within us. What are the conditions we place on ourselves and others? Where is their dormant fears or resistance or anger or pain? And I realized how much I would use my outer things to do to not want to face this. And so I really felt called this week, as the ego detective that I was, to be with that all, to feel it and understand that frequency of the ego, and the emotions, the energy emotions that fuel the ego, and the voice of this isn't right, and this is a problem, and that's not going to work. Those emotions needed to be loved. I needed to learn how to be with them, to integrate them, to go into the stillness. And that what was happening here was I was getting an opportunity to bring my consciousness, to bring my frequency, the capacity to be in light and love more upward, if I was willing to do that and feel that. And so I began to feel instead a very powerful sense of appreciation and gratitude, for the teachings, for our gurus, for the remover of darkness, and through that understanding that I don't have to speak to myself that way, or that I can really start to become more and more tuned into that authentic voice, which is always going to be a coach and a support and a love and an uplifter. The masters say true happiness does not come from fulfilling outward desires. It is a spiritual quest that comes from an expansion of consciousness. And sometimes we expand that consciousness. It can be uncomfortable. We're starting to access dormant emotions and thoughts and ways of seeing the world and ego perspectives that need to be loved and seen and brought up so that we can raise our consciousness. And so I really felt that we must keep expanding and opening our hearts and lifting that energy to our mind, and opening up that perspective, and to breathe and to break that chain of the ego. And so Ramakrishna used a great example of a fish caught in a net to show us why so few of us can transcend. When we get stuck in that lower energy, it's really hard to just descend the delusion and desires. And so some fish, and I went there for a little while, the lethargic or tamasic kind of just dive into the mud at the bottom, hoping to escape the net in some way, and then the other kind, the second kind of rajasic ones, like, let me get out of here, and start running towards the net and trying to break free. Both of them end up on somebody's plate. Only very few fish swim towards the light, gathering enough momentum to jump over that net into freedom. And that's what we're called today, a freedom of consciousness, freeing our egoic self out of the binds and bounds of delusion. Paramhansa Yognanda said, do your duty and escape the delusion of desires. Your highest duty takes focused, determined effort and the help of a guide. The net is all around you. What will you do? The great guide Yognanda says, you will find God when all your desires for other things are finished. When you realize that the only thing worth having is Him. And when every thought and every feeling is drenched in God. Yogananda showed us the example of supreme effort and a need for a guide or guru in his quest for a self-realized master in the great book, Autobiography of a Yogi. He wanted an authentic master who knew God, who lived in God, who knew self-realization. And he was a great adventurer, Mukunda. And after he had gone to Brendan Bar and tried to escape the Himalayas, it was 2 years before he found Sri Yukteswar, his beloved guru. And he went on a search for all the imposters and trying to find the real true things. What is a true saint? What are the qualities? How do I find that authenticity, you know? And the first one he met was the perfumed saint. And the perfumed saint was called Ganda Baba. And the guru who could manifest any flower essence at will could just give him your hand, and you would just like, oh, I'll take some rose, you know, I'll take some jasmine, you know, and it was just like just the aromatherapy all around you. And so when Yogananda, or Mukunda at the time as a child, he went and visited the saint, and he was inspecting, you know, the quality of his capacity to be a great leader. And the perfume saint approached him and said, would you like some perfume? And Yogananda said, what for? To experience the miraculous way of enjoying perfume, right? Mukunda, harvesting God to make odors? And the perfume saint, what of it? God makes perfume anyway. My own purpose is to demonstrate the power of God. And Mukunda said, sir, is it necessary to prove God? Isn't he performing miracles in everything and everyone enough? And Yogananda continued his search, and he met up with the Tiger Swami, and the Tiger Swami's, fighting from his ego and his true self. And then he met the great Lahiri Mahashaya, and he made beautiful, beautiful saints in his quest until he finally came to his beloved Sri Yukteswar. But he said of the perfumed saint, he said, when I finally met my master 2 years later, after meeting the perfumed saint, he taught me through pure example alone the measure of a true saint, my beloved Sri Yukteswar. So when Yogananda, just a beautiful love story, meeting his guru, and really the capacity of unconditional love and how that really brings out the best in all of us. And when he spent years in his master's hermitage, he saw many disciples escape ego consciousness, that dualistic Maya, that delusion. And it was through patient, kind counsel, but also determination and strict understanding of, he taught his devotees, destroy all wrong desires now, otherwise they will follow you to the astral world. If temptation assails you with cruel force, overcome it with impersonal analysis, right? Go in, take a look at it, be still, use your practices, and indomitable will. So willfully moving through it, saying, no, that is not for me. Won't power, says Yogananda. Every natural passion can be mastered. The impulse of wrong desire is the greatest enemy of the happiness of all of us. The devotee is finally freed from all compulsions when he transforms his need for human affection into aspiration for God alone. To really be motivated by pure godliness, to just want to be with God. And more, I think, as we awaken, we really see that that's all there really is. That's the most important thing in the world, is our desire for God. I love this. And it was such a beautiful saying that Yogananda said that has stayed with me for the last few weeks in my processing. I'm trying to move my consciousness in an upward direction. The heart opens only to the human chance of being. And it is in that beingness, in that stillness, in the calmness, as Kyle talked about today, that the calmness and the inspiration that comes through our calmness. And so when Yogananda asked, Guruji, I would like to hear some stories of your childhood. And Sri Yukteswar said, I will tell you a few, each with a moral, to help you see the importance of living truth, living authenticity. He said, once my mother, when I was a little boy, she tried to frighten me and told me there was a ghost in the chamber. I went there immediately and expressed my disappointment at not seeing that ghost. The moral, look falsehood and fear in your face and it will cease to trouble you. Isn't that one, right? Face our fears. Fear is the ego. The love, the force and power of our teachers, of all these teachings, that light will always overcome the darkness of that ego. And the second story, another early memory of Sri Yukteswar, which is really great because you think that he was just born this just like amazing, being, but he was also a kid. And it says, the story goes, he had wished for this really ugly, ugly dog. And not only that, he wanted it so badly, but it was his neighbor's dog that he wanted to take. And his parents tried everything, enticing him with these like little puppy loves and all this cuteness and beauty and all these appealing appearances of puppies, said Sri Yukteswar, but he would have none of it. And he realized, he had deaf ears to his parents for many years, and it was this big conflict in the house. And then finally, he said the moral came to him that attachment is blinding. It binds an imaginary halo of attraction on the object of desire, right? It seduces us. And then we go down that pathway, and it's always a dead end. We're always coming back to God. As Lahiri Mahashaya, an authentic master of self-realization, says, man is helpless against the insurgent sway of desires and passions, but these are rendered powerless. And man finds no power in their indulgence when he experiences the superior and lasting bliss through Kriya Yoga. You know, we practiced Kriya Yoga today. It was all about bringing the energy from the heart, lifting our consciousness to the spiritual eye, becoming the divine watcher, and watching that natural breath and affirming the truth. The ego is the soul identified with the body. Our true self, I am spirit. The most powerful, powerful mantra of recognizing and really affirming and confirming over and over and over the truth of our beingness. So we must redirect ourselves and keep going upward in our yoga practices and keep uplifting our desires. So we keep exchanging them for higher desires and higher desires till ultimately the one desire for God is our everything. And knowing God is our highest desire. And it reminded me of a time about probably 20 years ago. I was with my friend Paul, and him and I walked all the way down Narragansett Beach with a knapsack because we're going to have a picnic. And so we set up our picnic, and it's like the end of the day. You know, it's so beautiful there at the end of the day. It was hardly anyone there, but there was a volleyball game. And so we were watching the game. We're laying on our bellies on the blanket and watching the games, and people were just hitting over, and it was a great game. And then we noticed that there was one person that kind of lost his energy, lost his power, lost his confidence. You could just kind of see, you know, his energy kind of just went downward, you know. And I said, Paul, let's just say prayers and let's blast him with divine mother love. And he's like, all right. So the both was like praying and just sending him love. You are strong, you are powerful, you can do anything, you're going to hit that ball, right? And all of a sudden we say, you know, he's like, boom, you know, it was just like, you know, and it was effortless. And we're like, oh my God, is this real? And so then, you know, on the other team, another guy just kind of started to slump, started getting tired. His energy was kind of low, you know, and we're like, let's give it to him. You know, like, you're amazing. You're going to do this. You're the best volleyball player ever. And we just kept sending him love. And all of a sudden, you know, some part of him heard that and felt that upliftment, and he started to, you know, boop over the net. And throughout the game, we were just watching that power of sending love, sending prayers, sending energy, how we can do that for each other. You know, how as devotees, when we see maybe one of us is going through a hard time, we're in a karmic challenge, we feel happy for him because we know it's a good time because upliftment of consciousness is on the other side. But it can be hard. Energies can get drained, but we can be that. We can be that for them. We can send that energy to be that divine channel of that light and the love and the prayer, and be centered in our own selves and live more and more of the center where really God dwells. And through meditation, that beautiful effort and attunement, more and more we can center in God, which is our true home. Thank you. Now we'll have our offering.
Please take what you'd like to give, place it in your right hand, and repeat after me. Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
we offer to thee the fruits of our labors.
we offer to thee the fruits of our labors.
Bless this offering,
Bless this offering,
that it serve as a channel
that it serve as a channel
of thy light to truth-seeking souls everywhere.
of thy light to truth-seeking souls everywhere. Om. Peace.
Amen.
Amen.
Kelly asked me to sing this chant of, I'm not sure who wrote it, but Sri Yukteswar used to Sing it in his ashram with Yogananda. Desire, my great enemy. Desire, my great enemy, with his soldiers surrounding me, he's giving me lots of trouble. Oh my Lord, he's giving me lots of trouble. Oh my Lord, that enemy I will deceive, remaining in the castle of peace. Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. What will be my fate, oh Lord, tell me. Pranayam be thy religion, Pranayam will give thee salvation. Pranayam is a wishing tree. Pranayam is a wishing tree. Pranayam is beloved God. Pranayam is Creator Lord. Pranayam is the cosmic word. Pranayam is a cosmic word. Control a little pranayam, become all-pervading pranayam. You won't have to fear anything anymore. 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 Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. Night and day in thy joy, oh my Lord. You won't have to fear anything anymore. You won't have to fear anything anymore. You won't have to fear anything anymore. You won't have to fear anything anymore.
And now we'll have our Festival of Light. Let us lift up our hearts in a festival of light. The essence of this ceremony has been passed down from ancient times. O waves that we are in the bosom of the infinite sea, joyfully together, let us celebrate our own greater reality.